So I'm delighted to be here today. I'd like to just reiterate the thank yous that Holly gave, or that Nosway gave, and one of them is to Nosway and another to Holly. And Erin, who helped you get settled this morning. Also, Johanna Renfro from our office, who is our contracts manager, who came to help with today. A shout out to our framework authors over in the corner who'll be working with you later today. Yeah. Another shout out to the planning team. Thank you so much for overseeing that. We would not be able to do these, and in fact, we can't. We will not have one if we don't have district teams who are willing to present. Okay, so that makes everything go round. So let's give them a round of applause. Yeah. And then I think the other thing that's important to recognize, the other people here are you. It's important to recognize you because things are not, your work did not stop today. Schools did not shut down today so that you could come here. And people did not say, you know what, Jack is at an important learning session today, so I'm not going to email him. No one did that. And so I know that when you take a day like today and you come to something like this, you are doing double duty because you come back and you have to clean up from what you missed. But I think you really should pat yourselves on the back for taking this opportunity. I think for me, I don't know if this is true for you, but for me, one of the big bonuses of coming to something like this is that you have all this great new input, all these other ideas from other people, and a little bit of space in your day to be able to start connecting it to things that you're already doing and to thoughts that are kind of growing in your mind. And so I think that opportunity to do that is really, really important. And so I applaud you. I'm going to applaud you for being here today because I think that is really important. So I am going to give really, really fast updates on a couple things. I-Grant 664, we're almost done. Johanna's been working with me on this, and we're almost done with the approvals for that, and we're getting ready to do the reallocation of unrequested funds, so stay tuned. 773 we can't do anything about until actually right now, this moment, because we had to wait for all the grants to be in, and they were due yesterday, and then we will get back to you about those decisions. It's going to be a little more complicated this year. If you have questions about either of those, find me today. I don't know that much about today, but I know stuff about other things, so all right. I'm going to experience today along with you, and I'm really excited about it. If you don't know what the second bullet means, the WAC change for focused evaluations, see me, or go on the TPEP website and look at News to Know, the last bullet. There were big changes in rule to the focused evaluation, to what constitutes an observation, and to the date by which you must inform someone if they're being put back on a comprehensive evaluation, and you'll want to know about those if you don't. They're exciting changes, wonderful changes. I want to give a shout out to one of the offerings that we support in our office, learning focused supervision, also known as feedback conversations for professional growth. When principals, assistant principals, coaches, mentors, district administrators go to these trainings, they go, oh my gosh, where has this been all my life? So if your ESD isn't offering one, most our ESDs are. If they're not, encourage them to do so. We also have a state list of approved trainers for this if you're interested. And some of it's being incorporated into the leadership framework training. In eval, we are getting ready. Some of these things will take longer than others, but to have scored framework-specific videos on the eval website, Cell video, Danielson video, and Marzano video, so you can go on eval, even if you're not in eval. You don't have to be an eval, member, although it's free. You will be able to once these are up, and I'll send something out when they're ready. We're also working on developing a bank of student perception survey questions that will go on eval, so that a teacher could put together a student perception survey It would not be shared, the results would not be shared with his or her evaluator unless they chose to share the results. But they could use those questions to find out more about their practice. Because if you want to know how things are working for kids, the best way is to ask them. They will tell you. They will tell you. And what they say can be enlightening and surprising and fun and good to know. There were two things I forgot to put up there. And one is the framework trainings are going through some modifications for equity. And these are being rolled out very slowly. But in a year or so, if you haven't had instructional framework training, you had it right at the beginning, there are some things you're going to be missing. We're working on what the catch-up looks like, but just know that that folks going through framework training now are going to be getting some additional stuff. And then the other thing we're rolling out this year is an evaluation system toolkit. We did it at ESD 112 last week. Thank you, Mike Esping. And we are, it's iterative this year. Every time we roll it out, we're making changes to it to make it better and have more ideas. And we are really excited about that. We'll put a kind of final version on the web. We might do it after our January presentation at 189. And then we'll kind of button it up for the year in June and have that be next year's version of it. But every year we plan to make changes to this toolkit that might help you take a look at your practices around evaluation and growth, or growth and evaluation, and do some things. So I realize that the slide I have next is not the one that I want. I want a different one next. So I'm going to quickly, so avert your eyes for a moment. All right, just avert your eyes. I'll say when. Okay, now look, now you can look. All right, so we're here today about student growth. That's our theme this year. And it struck me last year sometime that when you look at student growth inquiry, so when someone gets a low student growth rating, they have to do a student growth inquiry. Did you know that? How many people didn't know that? It's okay, I'm not the TPEP police. How many? Okay, all right. So the student growth inquiry is where you go, wow, students didn't grow, or they didn't grow as much as we thought they should. I wonder what happened there. And the third bullet there says, let's look at extenuating circumstances. You know, we did the teaching thing we normally do, it didn't happen. Let's look at extenuating circumstances and really dig into what's going on. Well, that's great. It's a little late, I think, to be doing that, because we should always be looking at those extenuating circumstances. And that's what I just want to say a little bit about right now. So now I'm going to flip back. Could you avert your eyes one more time, please? Thank you. Okay, so this, I'm going to give credit to Kelsey Schmitz from OSPI. She's in the Center for the Improvement of Student Learning. And she said this, and I was like, oh, yes, this is so true. So when your fish dies, what are the kinds of things you ask yourself? Just think for a moment. What do you say? My fish is dead. You might say, water, was it too hot? Was it too cold? Was there not enough oxygen in the water? Should I put some of those little plants in there? Did they need a buddy? Did I overfeed the fish? Maybe I starved the fish. So you're all about these conditions. What was going on for the fish? Maybe after asking yourself those questions, you might come to a point where you say, I wonder if there's something wrong with the fish. It seems when a student struggles to learn, sometimes we start with what's wrong with the learner. Instead of maybe taking a look at, I wonder if this is the right instruction for this student, or if I need to maybe make the stair steps a little bit smaller. I wonder if this is the correct curriculum. Is this the standard this student should be looking at right now, or is there a different standard? Maybe it's the learning environment. I'm all about groups. This kid is an introvert. Maybe there are other things in the learning environment that are going on. And then, okay, what about the learner? What is going on with the learner? And so I would suggest that when we look at it in this order, the ISIL order, not the lice order, that can be helpful. So we don't like lice, right? Okay, so let's get that out of there. So I thought that that was a very important kind of thing to think about. I believe that if we want to be seeing student growth as a powerful lever rather than as a hoop, we need to be digging in a little bit on student growth. And I think that of all the pieces of TPEP that as I wander around the state and hear about the amazing things people are doing, but the one place that was a little bit more of an afterthought in our state was student growth. And so it's that idea, how can we make that a really powerful lever, not just a hoop? And Whitney is going to talk to you a little bit more about that. So sometimes I think this means being an advocate for system needs. So if I've tackled all the stuff I can tackle as a teacher, but I know that the needs have to do with substance abuse or with something that's going on at home or with all those many other things that impact kids, who can I enlist to be helpful with that so that I can keep my eye on the academic ball and we don't get distracted from our academic mission? Our equity gaps, our opportunity gaps are really, I think, important to address, but we can't wait on the academics while we tackle poverty and racism. We have to keep our eye on the academic ball while that is happening. So with that, I would like to introduce, to talk more about this, Whitney Meissner, who's going to be our keynote speaker today. I'm really delighted to introduce her. She has been a math and ELA teacher in the Federal Way School District, an assistant principal and in the Snohomish School District, a 14-year principal in the Chimacum School District, and she is now the superintendent of the La Conner School District. She's in her first year. She teaches at Western, she teaches at SPU, and she also teaches Zumba, and who knows what might happen here today up on stage. She's the third generation teacher in her family, and I'm really delighted to welcome her here today.
Yeah, it seems like we could use a little Zumba energy in the room, so watch out. You think I'm kidding. Here's the thing. Why do schools and school districts exist? We are here solely for one purpose, and we allow ourselves to get distracted from that purpose regularly. We are here to help kids learn. So how do we know that our kids are learning? All kids, every day. I have been asking this question quite a bit over the last few years, and I'm really sad to say that we are not very good at answering this question, the collective we. So my biggest challenge to you today is to get really good at answering that question. How do we know our kids are learning? One of the things we often do at these things is ask, who's in the room? And I've always felt really uncomfortable about that because it feels like we're categorizing people, which sometimes we need to do. But there's really only one question for me. How many caring people are in this room today? Everyone. That's fantastic. That's where it starts. We need to start with the heart. Sometimes we start with other things. So I just asked you this question. How do you know when kids are learning? What does it look like, sound like, and feel like? I want you to take just a minute before I continue to picture the kids that you work most closely with. When you know they are learning, what does it look like, sound like, and feel like? I want you to hold on to that feeling and that thought, and most importantly, those kids. What are they doing right now in our schools? How confident are you that they are learning right now? What are we missing in that learning experience by not being there with them today? But more importantly, how do you know that all students are learning? How do you know that all students are learning? And how do you tell that story of all students learning? When we first started this work several years ago about shifting the conversation from the old system to what we still kind of call the new system, the student growth idea felt like an add-on. But I contend that it is our most important work. And for me, student growth is equivalent to student learning. And our core work as school leaders and as school districts is to guarantee that every kid is learning every day. So I want us to embrace this idea that getting the opportunity to tell our stories of how we know kids are learning as part of our evaluation process is truly our most important work. It's not something to be avoided or to minimize. It's something we have to get better at celebrating and talking about. And here's why. I've had the opportunity over the past several years to work with a whole variety of teachers, principals, administrators, school districts, some in the state, some even out of the state. And I've heard some amazing stories. What I really want you to remember as I'm talking with you today is that you are doing miracles with kids and your staff members every single day, and I recognize that. But part of my job here today, my self-appointed job, no one asked me this, I just decided, is to be provocative and to push some buttons and maybe even make you uncomfortable. And sometimes when we're uncomfortable, that's when we're learning. Something's rubbing up against us and it's irritating us and frustrating us, and we just want to make it go away. But we need to be irritated and uncomfortable because that's how we are growing. But I heard a story once about a principal that was working with a teacher. And they were talking about student growth goals. And it was about the end of September, and the teacher said, "Oh, I already finished mine." True story. I had him take a pre-test on Monday. I taught him some stuff. I gave him a post-test on Friday. I'm done with student growth. It's not what we're talking about. That's doing a disservice to kids. How are kids learning in that classroom every day? Hey, you know what? Our kids watch us. They listen to us. They know when we stand up for something. They know when we're doing the right thing. And they know when we're silent, when we should be speaking. I had another story that was shared with me that's actually a really powerful story, and it was a PE teacher. This is an elementary PE teacher. My heart goes out to elementary PE teachers who see a different group of kids every 30 minutes every day. And learning how to have that transition in and out of the gymnasium to maximize learning was really important. And sometimes it was all he could do to get the kids into the class lined up, let alone try and have PE. So he came up with this wonderful behavior management system that taught the kids the expectations, gave them leadership points for helping guide the in and out of the gym, getting the equipment out, putting it away. And he would give that feedback to the classroom teachers, and there was this traveling trophy that went room to room depending on which group of kids had the most successful behavior in PE that week. And he wanted to use that for a student growth goal. And I said, that is amazing work. But how are they improving in physical education? What are the things that kids need to learn as PE students? It's not that his system was a bad idea. It's a great idea. It just wasn't right on point. I also heard a story one time of a teacher and a principal having a conversation about student growth, and a union rep happened to be in the room, and the union rep said to the teacher, "You don't have to give her that much information. She doesn't need to know that much about what's going on in your classroom." Folks, we've got to get past that. We've got to get past the us and them. We are in this together. We have got to be in this together. The reality is, we've got some equity issues in our school systems. As I was sitting around sitting this morning listening and having conversations with some very good friends, I took a moment to look around the room. There are some miraculous, incredible leaders in this room. I don't know all of you, but I know you're here because you care about kids and you care about teaching. But it struck me, we're in the Yakima Valley. Think about the demographics of the Yakima Valley, and then take a look around this room for just a minute. We do not represent the population. I sat in a meeting last week with a group of wonderful people, and we were talking about equity. My group was 8 people. All of us were white, and 7 of us were male. And yes, I pointed that out to my group. We have to get better about talking about the issues of racism, oppression, and privilege. And if the people who happen to have white skin are willing to have the difficult conversations about privilege, we might just start to flip oppression on its head. I heard someone share with me recently that privilege can be defined as an unfair or unearned advantage. And it doesn't mean that people who have privilege had an easy life or didn't work hard. It just means that they had something that they didn't necessarily earn that made things a little bit easier for them. And likewise, oppression is an unfair or unearned disadvantage, that because of a characteristic that was not controlled, life was a little more difficult, or a lot more difficult. And we have to be willing to have these difficult conversations. Talking about race is hard. It seems to have gotten very easy to talk about offensive things, as I would call them on Facebook. We owe it to all of our kids. Education is a property right. Public education is here for all students, and we need to make sure that every single day we are thinking of every child and how we are ensuring that they are learning. We're the adults with the education and the opportunities and the vision and the resources and expertise. If not us, then who? I know you are all doing great things, and I also know that we can all do better. When it comes to talking about student growth, one of the things that, as principals, superintendents, teacher leaders, coaches, we have to make it very easy for people to take risks. We have to make it very easy for people to be vulnerable with us. When I look at this picture of the one yellow door and the one white door, I've been thinking about this picture since I found it a few days ago. I'm not sure what the risk is in this picture. It's definitely going through a door that we don't know what's behind it. But is the yellow door the one we always go through, or is the yellow door the one we avoid? I don't know why I like to think about those things, but I do. The reality is, one of the reasons that we hear people say things like, I already did student growth, or you don't have to give the principal that much information, is because when people have been vulnerable with us, it ends up getting used against them. How do we embrace the opportunity to talk about this very difficult work of helping people learn and acknowledge that it's hard? I was talking with some of my teachers last week, and I said this, and I think I heard it from somebody else or I made it up, but we talked about the fact that teaching isn't brain surgery. It's a lot harder than that. Seriously, think about it. If I were a brain surgeon, there's a very good chance that, number one, I would have the opportunity to analyze what needed to happen and know exactly what the diagnosis was before I actually went in to do my work. I would probably be working on one brain at a time, I think. I've never been a brain surgeon, so I'm kind of just guessing. And I probably wouldn't be the only adult in the operating room. Imagine having like a team of 8 people per one brain. Yeah, we don't get to do that in teaching. Our work is hard, but it's the most important work that there is. And we have to make it work that people want to do, and we have to make sure that we make it safe for people to take risks and make mistakes. That being said, we also need to make sure we're taking risks that are appropriate to take. We also need to think about learning more. And we need to get better, again, this is my broken record message. We need to get better at telling our story of how we know kids are learning. Quite frankly, test scores are an easy way to tell that story. It is the least accurate way to tell the story of how kids are learning. Make sure that we're focused on learning. We know that teaching and environment and curriculum all impact learning, but let's put the kids and what they're accomplishing at the center of our stories. Remember that kids are learning all the time, and like I said a moment ago, they're watching us. They know when we're doing the right thing, and they know when we're quiet, when we should be saying something and taking a stand. I liked this quote too, that teaching is love in its purest form. And I liked these pictures of the adults learning with the kids. How do we empower students truly to learn together, to see themselves as self-advocates, to see themselves as agents of their own learning and their own lives? How do we help them see their teachers as true resources all the time, somebody who's going to help them open as many doors for their future as they can? And just like the kids are watching us when we teach, they watch us when we lead. This happens to be a picture of last January, a group of principals. I'm actually in that picture, but that's part of why I picked it, but there's also some incredible leaders there. We're standing on the steps in Olympia at the beginning of the 2017 legislative session. Do we consistently model good leadership? Do we reinforce excellent leadership that we observe in others? As leaders, we need to remember that we are always setting an example that other people are following. Growing up, I remember the Charles Barkley line of, "I am not a role model." And all of us sat back and said, "Oh yes, Mr. Barkley, you are. You may not want to be, but we watch you and we see you." And the same is true for us. I want you to think for a minute about the last professional development session that you led, or that you attended, or a class that you recently taught. What percentage of it was focused on learning? Here's my gift. All that's in the past. Doesn't matter. We have an opportunity right now to shift the conversation and make it stick around learning. Please embrace the idea of student growth as our most important work. All of us in this room, and as we go back to our buildings, need to be thinking in terms of, how do I strengthen the core instruction and learning for all kids in every classroom every day? Everything else is in support of that classroom and those students. We need to do the hard work on strengthening what happens in every classroom every day. Looks like I'm missing part of my picture, but it's a really nice picture. Our theme this year in LeConner is ACE IT. Achieve, connect, engage. And there's a reason that the middle circle is bigger. The middle is what holds us together. Our connections, our relationships, how much we work with our students, get to know them on an individual basis, give them hope. Pay them a positive compliment, a genuine compliment. Tell them what they're doing well. We need to set high expectations for achievement of all kids and high expectations for the adult support of learning. We've got to be in this together. No surprise, when we're shifting practice, it's hard, and it's painful, and it's uncomfortable, and it's irritating sometimes. Shift anyway. We had a speaker in LeConner earlier this week, Eric Bowles. And one of the things he said that really touched my heart and my soul is that research has shown that people prefer misery to uncertainty. True story. People prefer misery to uncertainty. So when you think about all of those things I just went through, about taking risks, being willing to shift, we understand why fear takes over. I know that what I'm doing isn't working very well, but at least I'm comfortable here because I know it, but I don't know what's going to happen if I try something new because I just don't know. We have to make those shifts comfortable and possible for people and inspire them to do that work. And we also have to have the hope. Because no matter what, in the end, everything's going to be okay. As long as we're leading from the heart, caring about kids, and doing our most important work. My hope for you today is that you will remember how rich you are, that you will remember that it is always a good time to show gratitude. Think about the last time, if you're a principal or another administrator, the last time you told the people that work with you something genuine that you admire and appreciate about them. And if you happen to be a teacher, when's the last time you told your students, this is something that I really appreciate about you? Especially our students that struggle. How often do they hear what you like and admire about them? And even more than that, how often do their parents hear what you like and admire about them? It's an amazing thing to pick up the phone and call a parent and tell them that, I just want to tell you what I admire and appreciate about your child. Most of them will say, is there another reason that you're calling? We don't get those good news phone calls enough. Take the time to do it. It feels good. It feels good for both of us. It's part of this message too. Every single day, we have a chance to build someone's spirit. Every single day. Take every opportunity to do so. There's enough going on out in the world that's ugly and nasty. We can be in charge of telling a different story about the world. Kids and teachers, even principals, it's amazing. We need to hear that others see our value and appreciate us for our humanity. You've probably seen this before. One of the things that this slide always makes me think is that I also don't forget how I made other people feel. If I made someone else feel great, I also feel great. So what a gift that is. A little bit selfish maybe, but why not? We can never have too much joy. But the opposite is also true. If I've hurt someone or caused them harm, I carry that hurt with me too. We need to take a moment to realize that student learning is hard, that teaching for all kids is hard, that approaching some of our systematic racism in our country and in our school systems is hard, and it's going to probably result in some hurt feelings. But if we're coming at it from the standpoint of, I am here for all kids, I believe in public education, then there will be people who will know that you are sharing your voice in a conversation that has been silent too long. I've been in public education for 26 years now. This is me with my 2 kids. Not the best picture, but sometimes it's the best you can do. And from the first day that I was a mom, I wanted to make sure that my kids had the best experience of schooling that they could possibly have. And I also wanted to make sure that every other kid had the best experience that I could offer to them. That's one of the reasons I chose to stay in Chimicum for 14 years. Last June, I got to hand my son Jack his high school diploma. I keep my kids with me, whether they're right next to my side or in my heart, but also as a reminder that I have that same obligation to everybody's kids. We're here for all of them. We're also here for all teachers. This is not talking about improving student learning, talking about strengthening the teaching profession. This is not about weeding out people who are less worthy. This is about lifting everybody up to a high standard. All kids, all teachers. We need to focus on strong relationships that allow space for vulnerability, risk-taking, and getting out of those stuck spots. Maybe you're not quite miserable, but you're still stuck. Stepping into the uncertainty to do wonderful things for all kids. We need to emphasize positive conversations, and most importantly, we need everyone to tell their stories. How do we know all kids are learning? Keep those kids that you have back at the school close to your heart today. You're here today for them. Thank you.